So, Parvesh, each journey is very different, and our journeys pretty much shape us. Now that you are doing freshly, you picked up a problem. What do you think your journey, how do you think your journey has shaped you to do this? Or to ask differently, why do you think you are better placed to do this than someone else? Let's say me. What has been, what are your experiences and learnings along the way, which kind of give you an edge here?
Uh, so during my work journey, so I've had opportunities to work across multiple legs of the supply chain for fruits and vegetables, right from the warehouse to the middle mile, the supply chain, and then facing the customers also. So while I was working at Grofers, so I was leading the last mile supply chain part, the initial first year, and then during my second year there, I was sort of looking after the entire supply chain from warehouse to first my part till the uh, retail store, which was one of the offline initiatives of Grofers. And because there the customer used to sort of visit the store, right? And while working at OTP, because I was leading the growth part there, I had my large exposure towards the customer side of things. So at Grofers, one thing that we realized was, uh, because I was part of that supply chain, right? So supply chain is highly complex for both grocery and fruits and vegetables, right? And uh, we sort of learned was because uh, the supply chains within the organizations like Grofers or Chepto Blinkit, for example, right now, these supply chains have been built with grocery first in mind, right? So every discussion that we used to have was around grocery first, right? There were never a sort of decision that we used to make where we considered fruits and vegetables first and then expanded to grocery. Right? It was the other way around. Fruits and vegetables tab aata tha when there were issues, there were complaints, higher complaints during summers and all, right? These were the times when fruits and vegetable was discussed. And while working at OTP, because I was sort of most in touch with the resellers and the customers, right? Uh, I sort of learned from the customers firsthand that we as customers have been buying fruits and vegetables differently than the solution that are available currently online, right? So generally, what we do is we go to our retail shop, kirana shop, right, or the tela wala, and then we pick the products from there. Right? We usually prefer seeing and touching the products and then selecting them because we have to eat them, right?
Yeah.
It's not the selection is not as obvious as selecting a grocery product, let's say, or a cloth apparel, for example, right? So for fruits and vegetables, the selection is slightly more nuanced. Right? The buying experience is more nuanced with us, right? And sort of this was one of the reasons where what I saw was a lot of customers initially would come to the platform, let's say OTP, right, for the sake of discounts and all, right? But they would quickly go away to their own buying behaviors. Offline में खरीद रहे थे, so they'll go back to offline. Second part was that uh, there was no sort of transparency in the process, right? My buying behavior is different online versus offline, right? जब product घर पे आ जाता है उसके बाद then I'm able to see what I'm getting in my plate, right? And usually what we do offline is we never buy rotten vegetables or fruits, right? But in online there's no option, right? So whenever we get rotten products, right, that breaks our trust, right? So if you talk to customers, a lot of customers who are buying online currently, right, groceries, fruits and vegetables, all, right, they'll tell you that uh, you, I'm sure I was also a customer, I'm also a customer. We all have gone through that journey, right? So there's a lack of trust that what I will receive on my table if I order online for fruits and vegetables, right? So this is the gap that is there. Uh, so these are the nuances that I learned across my roles. And now that as a customer, I see that my behavior is changing because of the convenience, because of the uh, convenient option that I have with quick commerce rising up, right? So this is a problem that sort of is uh, we are very attached to, because as a customer you feel the pain, right? That you order everything online, but you're still buying fruits and vegetables offline, right?
Right.
So my wife would never let me buy fruits and vegetables online, right? Even if I have slight, inclination towards that. But I know the reasons, right? So we spoke to around maybe 50 plus of our peers right before starting Freshly, and this was a story with everyone, right? So either they are not buying, their parents are not letting them buy, right? Because once you receive rotten production all, the trust breaks, right? And then you go back,
See, one way of looking at your journey is you learned quick commerce at Blinkit
right?
and you learned fresh at OTP, and you're saying that, okay, the intersection seems to be an interesting proposition. Let's build. So, from someone who has seen both of these things, you are the right person to build it. But if I see it as but if I see the same thing as a user, if I need fresh, I'll wait for tomorrow morning. OTP does a great job there.
Right.
If I need it now, then I'll make a slight compromise. Usually, the stuff is decent. There's certain things they don't solve well. The quick commerce folks, maybe the bananas and the papayas and the mangoes, but there is always some stuff that they solve well. And if my kitchen, you know, needs something and we need to kind of prepare dinner and I don't have time now, I'll order something which is very obvious that everyone will give me in good shape. Where fresh is less of a factor. The shelf life of that veggie is long enough. I'll not order greens, but I can order something else maybe. So from a user's perspective, a combination of these two are doing the job. In that sense, do we really need a focused quick commerce app which just focuses on fresh fruits and vegetables?
So there are certain use cases for me when I'm ordering fruits and vegetables, right? I'm running out of things. I need them right away, right? So I don't plan most of the things that I buy on quick commerce. I do not plan them, right? So
Yeah.
usually that is not a planned behavior, right? So I would not be able to plan it that I would buy these things from Blinkit and the other things from OTP, right? So that is how the behavior is changing, right? At the same time, now if let's say I have an option, let's say if I have an option to buy fresh that I can receive in 10 minutes, why would I wait for one more day, right? As a user, I don't see that need, and I think we believe that this is a behavior that is changing across a lot of customers. Even if they used to plan, now that they are buying groceries at least very frequently on these quick commerce platforms, their behavior would change towards it, right? Right. So even if they used to plan it, they won't plan it any longer, right?
So
We have seen that shift in our behavior itself.
yeah. So is it like you're also mentioning that you spoke to 50 of your peers, and here also we are referring to ourselves as users, which we are. But to build a large company, we have to go beyond people like us.
Right.
So, when you are talking to your current customers, are you seeing people who are very different from us behaving in a similar manner, or they're behaving differently? Like my sense is that people who are above 50, they like to kind of go out and kind of touch and feel and then buy. They're willing to go to the mandi on a Saturday morning to get fresh and maybe better prices. They're youngsters, people who are in their 20s, who who don't even kind of know. I mean, I'm also like we also somewhere in the middle. That's why kind of we come there. But there are people who would not even know what is the difference between a fresh spinach leaf and not something that is not fresh. They're not cooking. The maid is cooking. They will just say kuch bhi bana lo. That kind of a mindset. And but how has your experience been? So you talked about when you were looking to start. After starting, you have actually spoken to real customers, heard their pain points. You would have got complaints. How are your complaints different from the complaints you used to see at quick commerce or the complaints you used to see at next day fresh kind of offering? Can you just talk a little bit more about how the users think and act, and what is your understanding of that beyond people like us?
Right. So to answer your first part, uh, yeah, you're right. So once we started up, and now that we have spoken to a lot of customers, the real customers, right, not just the peers. Well, so we have come across multiple sort of behaviors of the customers. Uh, so we sort of had an opportunity to speak to all three segments, the younger generation, sort of millennials like us, and the boomers, right? So I think one thing is certain, that so when we speak to even older people, right, a lot of them had scenarios or sort of use cases where they had to buy it for 10 minutes, right? Because there was an uncle, and he used to work in Delhi, and he stays in Noida, right? So he's sort of like uh,
Metals.
commuting every day, right? So he doesn't get much time to go out and shop, right? So during weekdays, whenever he get a chance to buy, he would buy it, but he hardly would get those chances. So he prefers freshly because of the 10 minutes, right? And this was a reason across multiple other people also in the same generation, right? With younger folks, yeah, we have heard things like, the quality is fine, right? The quality is fine, but we still buy offline, especially things like fruits, or tomatoes, because uh, their perception is that whenever there are high chances of getting a product getting rotten, right? So they also have lesser trust while buying online, because there have been cases with them that they sort of do not get fresh, so they don't know what is a high quality spinach or low quality, right? Sort of, but they clearly can see the difference between a rotten product and
Obviously.
uh, not a rotten product, right? So they, I mean, as per our conversations with people, this has been across the board, that they realize the quality that is available offline versus that is available online currently. There is a major difference between them, right? So this has been a relation of sort of uh, all the generations, and for younger generation, they do not feel it till the time they go out and do the show. Although behavior is changing, that they are now not going out much, right? But we believe that if they get a better option online, right, they would switch to that. To give an anecdote for that, so when we didn't have any option to buy on online for fruits and vegetables. What was our behavior was, we would go out and we would sort of start buying from a shop where the quality is better, the freshness is better, right? Especially when it comes to non-standard products, especially when it comes to fresh products, we generally have a preference that we'll buy from that shop, right? So we won't buy, even if there is a kirana store right within our society, right? We still develop our preference that we would buy from that shop, right? Whenever we would get a
Emergency aside,
chance,
yeah.
we'll just go out there and we'll buy from there. So that is the kind of category nuance that is there for fruits and vegetables. That freshness as a sort of characteristic of the category has been a preference since years, right? So I don't think there is any difference of preference for freshness when it comes to younger generation or the older generation. So we believe if we are able to provide a consistent experience, better quality than which is available in 10 minutes, I think users would prefer that as an option, even if they are sort of buying everything else on any other platform.
So what I understand is that freshness is a very critical part of this category, and whoever solves it well will get rewarded. Now, two questions. One is, how are you solving freshness? How is your product solving freshness better than others? And why do you think others will not be able to catch up?
Right. I think this was a very fundamental question that we had initially, right, when we started Freshly, right? Because as a consumer, we felt it as a sort of insider. We saw what was happening and what was not happening that was required, right? So uh, we were very convinced, how can we build it? How can we build a much better experience, right? So what? Let me start with what are the issues that are there currently with the options that are available for the customers to buy online, right? So to start with, even at the customer front, which is the buying experience is broken for the customer. The way we buy offline versus the way we buy online, and it's different. And this matters in fruits and vegetables for the same reason that we eat them, right? So quality matters a lot, right? So we need to see them, and then only we can consume them, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but this can be different from for fashion, for other categories, or maybe grocery even, right? Because there are a lot of standard branded products available there, right? But for fresh, the experience has to be uh, sort of very trustworthy right from the initial touch point, right? So this part is broken currently. So unless and until I receive the products, uh, which I, for a quick commerce sort of use case, I require them immediately, right, urgently, and there's no point of me returning it back if the product is not good quality, right? So this is a sort of fundamentally broken behavior that is there currently, and that has not been solved so far, especially by the quick commerces, largely because the platforms were built for uh, the buying experience was built for grocery first. Now it's expanding into a lot of other categories. It's now going horizontal, but so one buying experience that has been missed is for fruits and vegetables, right? This is what we are solving. The second part is the freshness. So again, for the same reason that the supply chains of quick commerce, if I take an example, were built for grocery first, right? So for grocery, what you'll do is uh, there are multiple dark stores within a cluster, let's say, right? Delhi NCR as a cluster, right? So you'll place a couple of warehouses where you'll consolidate them, right? And because you're processing your grocery there, you'll process the fruits and vegetables also within that warehouse, right? You'll grade them, sort them, right, do the QC
Packing.
packaging, and build the units, and then you store them there, right? Then you'll batch them as per the supply requirement for multiple stores, right? This is how the supply chain would go along, right? Even if you're buying from mandi, it'll come to the warehouse first, right? So that leg of processing uh, works very well for grocery, right? But it doesn't work for fresh because it adds another layer of processing which runs in series and not in parallel, right? If you see the behavior in offline or even omni-channel, sort of the organized retail, right? The stuff would be received within their storefront right in the morning from Mandi. Right, there's no extra processing in between, and the processing would happen as the day goes by. Right, so it happens in parallel. So you don't sort of add an extra layer, extra day in between, right? And especially because it has been packed a day before it reaches the customer, right? So, and the QC is not done at the dark stores, right? So, sort of like there is a large lag between what the customer would receive versus what was packed, right? And because it's all packed, uh, you don't see that behavior in the retail stores, right? Nothing is packed when it comes to fruits and vegetables, right? Because they need air to breathe, right? So this, one day plus packaging a day before actually changes the quality a lot, especially uh, for products with the lower shelf life, right?
Yeah.
You know, papaya, for example, right? Or even tomatoes, for example, right? So for these products, the quality would deteriorate a lot, right? Uh, for other products, like because there is an extra processing like that is there in between, what the platform would have to do is they'll have to buy semi-ripe or unripe products
Okay.
with the hope that they would get ripened by the time it will reach the customer next week, right? So that is why usually whenever we buy mangoes, bananas, right, products that require ripening after they have been harvested, right? So there
Yeah.
are a lot of fruits that require harvesting after they have been uh, harvested, right? So for those, there would always be a gap, right? So these are the nuances that are there for this category, and that is why it requires a different supply chain, right? The supply chain would have to be thought different, right? And have to be built differently, right from the sourcing to processing
Yeah.
and to the buying experience of the customer.
But if I have to push you back, like, why can't they do the same thing at this dark stores that you are doing? Because uh, it's not fundamental to how they're doing things. Yes, most of their procurement happens at the mother warehouse and then it goes to the dark store. But if you can do it in your small if you can do it at your small dark store, they can do it at their large dark store for sure. They will find another 100 square feet to do this. Why do you think they would not be able to kind of replicate this supply chain that you have?
Let's say if I have to build this supply chain as a quick commerce platform myself, right? So what I'll do is I'll have to change my processing or the flow of processes, right? I'll have to do all the processing at the store level, right? So even at the operations front, I'll have to do a lot of changes. I have to set up teams there for processing and all, right? Now, currently, my teams are within the warehouse, mother warehouse, right? For so from the operations front, it's a major sort of change for me, right? Setting up those processes, shifting them from mother warehouse to all the different stores. That is sort of like starting from the scratch, right? And my processes currently uh, in dark stores are not meant for that. So maybe I'll have to maybe set up a new unit for that, a separate unit for that, right? So that is building from scratch, right?
So why do you say that
So,
this dark store may not? Because I don't think they will set up a fresh dark store and a grocery dark store, because then their order cannot be clubbed into the same. Because when a customer is ordering, they are not caring about whether this dark store that dark store is what is fulfilling it. So they would
right.
want to kind of aggregate the items into single order for the customer. Otherwise, or maybe they can do it differently because Amazon does it like that. One order, 5 items, 5 different deliveries. But why can't they do it in their store? you know See, there is one way of thinking about it, is that when it is a single percentage contribution to the GMV, 7-8% or whatever, how much effort do I want to put in? I have bigger fish to fry. But at the scale these horizontal companies are, even that 5, 7, 10% is huge in terms of dollars. And that kind of means that they can treat it separately as a BU. They can, put in all the effort in the product, in the supply chain, which is required to solve it, because it's a very adjacent category for them. And it's a frequency driver for them, because no grocery has a longer, kind of fulfill, replenishment. Grocery has a longer cycle to replenish, but this is much faster. Every 3-4 days, you need to, get some fresh vegetables into your house. So they do understand the criticality of it. It is becoming meaningful in terms of dollars. Do you still feel that they would not be able to kind of pull this thing because it's critical?
So I'm not denying that they won't be able to pull it off, right? Of course they can, right? But the question is when, right? So uh, as of today, if you, as you mentioned, so the contribution of FNV towards the overall business is single digit, right? So the focus is sort of single digit. At the same time, the priorities as of today, with the increasing competition, because the Flipkarts and Amazons are jumping in, right? So the competition is for
Fashion and
categories,
electronics,
yeah, for
beauty.
categories, right? So the competition is across the horizon, right? So sort of like the horizontal is the next war space, basically, right? So this is where that is where the focus would be, at least in the near term, right? So a couple of years maybe, right? And expanding into multiple geographies would be another focus, because uh, if you reach the customer first, right, you would have higher chances of retaining, right? Or maybe if someone who is not reaching the customer first would be at the losing. So expanding fast has to be there with the competition when there are no differences in categories otherwise, right? So so it's not a question that they won't be able to pull it off. At the same time, so as I mentioned, when we worked at because we have worked with founders, the same founders in our previous organizations, so we know that there is a baggage attached to this category, right? The contribution is less, but the nuances are very high, right? This is a very hard problem to solve, right? So why not solve the easier problems first? The
Makes
focus
sense.
would be definitely towards the easier problems first.
So what you're saying is that the right decision for them is not to go after this. The return on effort is much, much lower here. So why not go for things which are easier to solve, and also where your competition is coming with, and you need to kind of own those categories. Fair?
Yeah,
But somewhere you also mentioned that reaching to the customer first is a big factor in who eventually retains the customer, or who has a first, right on the customer, if I may. So you will be the last to reach the customers. Uh, so that is another challenge that you will have to kind of deal with. So
yeah,
there are people who have tried quick commerce, have become converts of quick commerce. Now they're either buying fruits and vegetables from quick commerce, or they're not buying fruits and vegetables from quick commerce, or they don't believe in quick commerce. These are the three categories. If they don't believe in quick commerce, If they didn't buy grocery from there, foods is another battle. Vegetables are another battle. So let's keep them aside. So it's the people who who are users of quick commerce. Now they are buying vegetables and fruits from quick commerce. They, to convert them, you have to really create that differentiation. And if they have already lost their hope from like that online commerce doesn't work for fresh, then again, kind of making them change their mind and try and kind of get positively surprised is also a hard one. So you are not getting into virgin territories, you are getting into markets where people have tried this, tried to order and then didn't work for them or is working for them. So how do you deal with this? Everyone is a difficult user for you, right?
Right, right, right. So there are two parts to it. So one is, so we are planning to, sort of target customers in the same sort of segments that you mentioned, right? So people who are buying online already, right? But they have problems, or they didn't have much good experiences while buying fruits and vegetables online, especially with the quick commerce platforms, right? So these are the customers that would sort of be the lowest hanging fruit for us, because they already are looking for other options and they are buying already from the quick commerce platform, right? So this is one easier to, of course, acquire, right? The second part is people who are not buying online, or they are not buying online anymore, right? So if you look at a similar thread across these customers, so I'm sure there would be certain customers who are happy with the online platforms, right? But currently, right? But if you look at the penetration level of fruits and vegetables uh, within the quick commerce platform, which is single digit, during the time that I worked with growers, it was around 5% only, right? So, uh, but the share of our expense, the household is around 25 to 30% for fruits and vegetables, right? So that means a lot of customers are still buying from them, but at the same time, they are buying from offline other channels also, right? So majority would be buying from other channels as well, right? Especially the offline channels, right? So as I said in the beginning, so if you sort of uh, go and buy fruits and vegetables from online platform because of the discounts and all, right? You'll be there for a couple of orders, but then you'll go back to your original channels, which is largely the offline, maybe, right? So this is how the behavior has been, right? So when I was at OTP, I spoke to a lot of customers there, right? And this was a trend that a lot of people would buy and then they leave, right? Although that is a trend everywhere, right? But they would leave after a couple of months, or after a couple of weeks. But the reason was because of the inconsistency in the quality. That was sort of like one of the major reasons, right? And as I said, so there are multiple touch points which needs to be solved, especially for the buying experience of the customers, right? Where they prefer offline channels, right? So they have never left offline channels as such, right? So for us to make sense, while there are other channels available for the customer where they can buy groceries also, other stuff as well, right? To make sense for us so that the customers would buy from us, is, so our belief is on the same concept, that the customers would prefer a different channel for fresh, especially for unbranded products where they have reliability, consistency, right? The freshness is there, right? So there would always be a difference. So let me put it this way. So when there was Flipkart and Amazon, so they were horizontal right from the day one, right? So it was easier for us to think about the vertical marketplace, Mintra medicines, right? But now, because these platforms started up with the grocery first, now they're expanding into horizontal categories, right? For a customer, when everything is horizontal, uh, this from my macro perspective, for a customer, when everything is horizontal, a marketplace, a vertical marketplace would make sense for them, right? So, and this has been sort of, we have seen this behavior in customers in Goa City also, where we are present currently, because that is a perfect place where offline has not developed much, and the customers are buying a lot of stuff online, especially their daily needs, and they have been using all sort of platforms, right? So we have spoken to customers. We have not come across so far. We have not come across any, or much number of customers who are buying from just one platform, right? So they're buying from multiple platforms. Milk Basket is also there, Countrylite is also there. At the same time, Jepto, Blinkit, and offline, of course, is always there, right? For them whenever they get a chance, right? Especially for fruits and vegetables. So I think this is the same behavior that would be replicated online as well, which was there offline. That if I get a fresh produce anywhere online, I would have a preference for that, right?
So
And
you're
if we
saying
as a
that.
platform are able to get a preference of the customers, we believe we can make a large business out of it.
So what I understand is that people are not, as of now, people are buying from multiple platforms
Right.
because their problem is not fully solved, and that's why, like, when they find something good, they buy it. Uh, for whatever is good, if you're getting something good at one place, you'll buy it. But if you for something else, you may have to go elsewhere. So you're doing all those things, and that means that they will give you a chance that let's try this also. The the downside is very limited. What do you lose if you kind of anyway, kind of it's just a small ticket.
Right.
And if you find a new solution which works, then you'll kind of try to kind of use that. I get that. But somewhere you mentioned two questions on this. One is that Gore City, your first micro market, you're saying that offline is not very well developed. So are you saying your proposition works when the offline is not very well developed? And number two, you somewhere mentioned about companies which are focused on fresh and they have a next day delivery kind of a format. There also the quality was not consistent. The freshness was not consistent. So what are you doing in your product that will solve that problem, which hasn't been? I can understand when quick commerce hasn't fully solved it because they have so many things to attend to. But someone who was just focused on fresh, they would have solved this, or they would solve it before a company which was not even there a few months back. So on both these, can you kind of share your thoughts?
Okay, so there are two parts. So one is, can we tap into the offline customers also, and the second part is the vertical marketplaces, right? Are they
Yeah,
still making sense for the customer, right? So to answer your first question, so uh, for offline, for the customer who are not buying online currently, right? Especially fruits and vegetables, let's say, right? Because people are buying fruits and vegetable online, the share of those people is lesser than the total number of people buying online. They might be buying other categories, right? So, so the way we look at this is that, so one is the trust barrier which is there, right? Maybe from the word of mouth, or they've not started buying online yet, but the trust barrier is still there. Right? So I've come across people in my, I have very sort of limited sample set for this. I've come across some of my friends, especially some of my relatives, older generation and all, and within my same generation, some of the females are, right. So their preference is offline, right? I don't know why that, but largely it looks like there's a trust gap, right? And this is why we are trying to replicate the same behavior, the same buying experience that is there offline. If we can replicate it online, we can bridge those gaps, right? अगर वो same pieces मुझे दिख रहे हैं online, I'm placing the order for them, I'm receiving the same products, right? Sort of like it bridges a lot of trust gap that is there currently, right? So this is our sort of play on that we can actually build a platform which stands for trust, right? And transparency. So sorry, so we can actually tap into those
fair.
customers through this. For your to answer your second part, are people or the quality is not consistent currently for vertical marketplaces, right? So I believe because I work with OTP, right? So I when I started working with OTP, I was actually very excited about the model, right? Buying directly from the farmers and a very small supply chain, right? And then you uh, sort of supply it to the customer next day, right? Sort of like looks like a very exciting supply chain, and that is why I was very excited about this. But I realized there are sort of a couple of certain gaps which now needs to revamp, right? I think during that time it was a great solution, right? But it needs to sort of revamp in terms of managing the supply chain itself to provide a better quality to the customer, right? If you compare those solutions with the offline channels, right, the kirana stores, the organized retail, there's still a difference, right? Because the supply chains are shorter for kirana stores, because let's say, to give an example, you buy from farmers directly, then you set up the collection centers, and then there's a again warehouse would make sense initially, right? That is how you structure your supply chain. You won't structure your supply chain from day one that I'm going to set up stores, retail stores, or dark stores, right? This is how the supply chains have been designed so far for vertical marketplaces. There's a warehouse, processing warehouse in between there as well, right? So this is why that processing leg that is there in between the warehouse itself, it is a similar supply chain which is there in the quick commerce as well, right? So that adds to the complexity because there are multiple handshakes. It adds to multiple handshakes also. It adds delay to the entire processing time as well, right? At the same time, the processing happens in a day before it is supplied to the customer, or half day before it is supplied to the customer, right? You still end up sort of packaging them and doing the QC, for like 12 hours or maybe one day before that, right? In case of OTP, it will be less than 12 hours, but still there's a lot of lag between it is handed over to the customers and when it was QC quality check, right? So I I certainly believe that there are there's a room for growth, right? So our solution is sort of replicating the behavior that is there in the offline, right? So uh, so if you look at the qualities available offline versus even the vertical marketplaces, I believe there's still a gap, right? So we are actually trying to make it as fast as possible, right? चाहे वो मंडी से चाहे वो डायरेक्ट फार्मर से, it should reach the final dark store immediately. There should not be any processing in between, right? And
But like,
there, yeah,
Handpick does that. It buys from the mandi and it delivers to the customer's house early in the morning, and there the quality is solved. Like they've really solved quality well. Uh, I think the focus is a little bit on the premium side, but quality I think is solved. They're not 10-minute delivery. They're solving for freshness and the quality. Uh, they're not solving for price as much, I think. Mm. Uh, and they're not solving for time, but quality and freshness they've solved. I don't know exactly how their supply chain is different from OTP's, but somewhere that, and maybe OTP is designed. They started as a B2B company, and so there are a lot of capabilities they built on the farmer side and sourcing side. But this is still in the works, the consumer side of things. But this is a recent enough pivot, like maybe 6 months ago, handpicked pivoted from sorted to this. I think this problem they have addressed very well. How do you see that, uh, you know, as a competition?
yeah, I think to be very honest, I don't have all the details of the supply chain of Henpick, right? I'm more familiar with the OTP supply chain, right? But yes, this can be solved definitely, right? If you supply next day early morning to the customer and you buy a couple of hours before that. So that is sort of like the same supply chain which we are building, right? So sort of
Right.
like it is being supplied to the dark store first, and as and when the customer orders, then reach to the customers. Most of the order that we receive are in the early morning itself, right? But we see that solving for different sort of use cases for the customer, right? So I place my orders for 10 minutes whenever sort of uh, I have not planned it, right? And so as I said, so we have this is sort of like a changing behavior of the customer, and we've not come across a lot of customers so far, even in our peer circle or even in the real customers that we have been speaking so far. Although those would be the people who are sort of coming to freshly because of 10 minutes, right? Sorry, to start with, right? But I believe if you look at the example of next day delivery when there was Grofers, right, versus now it's Blinkit. So the customers have spoken loudly, right? So there is a massive pull from the customers for 10 minutes versus next day. Right? So
Got it.
maybe for quality that answers because that is similar supply chain. But for the use case of the customers, the value proposition for the customers is entirely different.
So I understand. See, from a user perspective, I want three things. I want it now, I want it cheapest, and I want it freshest. So whoever is, and everything else is a trade-off. If you ask me, okay, this is a little bit expensive, or I have to go out, or it'll take longer, or it is not fresh, or it is expensive, whatever. So all these are trade-offs. So I don't question the proposition. I think that I fully agree on. The question is that, so maybe what we are saying is that proposition will win. Proposition of really fresh fruits and vegetables at competitive market prices delivered to my doorstep in 10, 15, 20 minutes is a winning proposition. If it works over time, the 50-year-olds and the 60-year-olds will also start converting, because there is no point in going out or planning and all those things. As you said, the customer has spoken that we want it now, and there is no trade-off in grocery. I'm getting the same thing, same shampoo bottle. So it doesn't matter whether I'm buying from e-commerce or quick commerce or modern trade or neighborhood store or kirana store or whatever. Uh, Price anyway, anyone who has scale can pass on the benefit of price, and obviously they have to build an efficient model. If it is coming all the way from Bangalore to Gurgaon, then obviously there is an issue there. So let's say this is a winning proposition. The question is, who will win? Who will build this proposition and scale this proposition? Maybe you will build this proposition, but then someone else can scale it faster. So there are these vertical players who can solve fresh as well as you can. They have to build this quick commerce legs. They may want to, they may not want to, is one thing, but if they can, then they have a similar proposition. And there are already quick commerce players who have also solved fresh, not as well as offline has solved. And if they focus, that this question we have discussed at some level. But the other side of it, that people who have solved fresh, they can also solve quick. Obviously, you are day one designing everything with a lot of these inputs in your mind and these constraints, and you will come up with an original, nice solution and iterate towards it. But someone has a head start on something else, and would they not be able to kind of do this? Uh, Essentially, can someone else not build the same proposition faster than you and scale and win?
I think for the vertical marketplaces, some of them may have solved the quality part, and of course, it makes sense for them to provide the value proposition to the customer that they want, right? 10 minutes, right? They would maybe decide for it sooner or later, right? But I think uh, the the change of supply chain for the quick commerce guys is very large. At the same time, the change of supply chain for vertical marketplace is equally sort of different or large for them, because the current supply chain would have to be remodeled from sort of scratch, right? There are no dark stores currently. You have to set up the dark stores, right? The processing is, in some cases, OTP, for example, the processing is happening at warehouse currently. Would have to be totally sort of revamped to maybe just a closed off sort of warehouse. And I think one part of that is the question is about time, right? At what point of time would they be able to decide this? This is the change that we need. One sort of kind of baggage, you can say, or something that would prevent them to make the decision sooner or later is because I worked across vertical marketplaces also at OTP. There's a sort of belief that they are solving for a different customer behavior, which is next day. So this is their differentiation, right? So how would they differentiate from other quick commerce players, right? If they jump into quick commerce, that is like a direct competition with the quick commerce as well, right? That adds to complexity again, right? So we'll have to be better than them. That is again, now we don't have any competition, right? We are solving for a different behavior for next day delivery, right? The customer that are placing with us are different segment of customers versus people who are buying for quick commerce, right? This is sort of the mental model that is there currently, right? So this will sort of add to
So
fill in the gap. So
let me
I
push
mean,
you back. So see, I understand what you're saying. Eventually, it is about execution. I think thoughtful execution. Whoever does it will win it, and everyone has
exactly.
to back. And the market is big enough; it will create space for different. Today, also, like all these are coexisting and growing, and they're not growing beyond, in terms of fruits and vegetables, beyond their growth rate, is because they've not solved it as well. If they solve it better, they will grow faster, or they'll become bigger. That part, is there. See, when Zepto was starting,
Right.
someone would have asked them this question that grofers can also do this. And Adit would have responded like this: they're a scaled up company, their processes are in place, they're not a dark store company, they're this kind of a company, their focus is different. But Albinder, overnight, kind of in a blink, he converted to Blinkit, scaled it, raised capitals, got acquired. Whatever he had to do, he did. And if you see, they've grown bigger than kind of Zepto in no time, probably. I wouldn't say they've grown bigger, but they're as big, if not bigger, as Zepto is. So my sense is, whatever little I have learned, is that competition doesn't come from places, from companies which are sorted in their they have a plan that is working, their customer is happy, they will keep wanting to grow on that side. The competition comes from companies which have not figured things out, which are still struggling, and they say, oh, this model works, why didn't I think of it? Doesn't matter, now I know it works, let me just reorient everything and go for the kill. And because they have a team, they have the relationships, the buyers, the sellers, everything. If they can get their act right quickly, they can win. And we have seen it twice. Zomato did it earlier. They were not in the delivery business at all. Swiggy was there, they came from behind. Then Blinkit came from behind. Incidentally, they are just one company today, but and they were all at a like many years into the like Blinkit. Grofers was 2015 or 2014 company. When Zomato started delivering, it was already half a dozen year old or something like that. So companies have done it. It's more about execution, and probably do you need to do that, or your life is sorted without that. We're seeing Flipkart coming into this category with minutes. Now Albinder would have said that no, they are not into quick commerce. They are a different kind of a company. Their supply chain is different, but Flipkart is coming. Big Basket is also coming into it. So there is enough excitement about the format of quick commerce, of 10-minute delivery, and as you said, customer is really wanting for it. So then people don't are not left with a choice. I cannot be sitting with a customer base who says that give it to me tomorrow. If everyone else is delivering in 20 minutes, I can't keep holding on to that customer base, because tomorrow that will flip. Today they're saying tomorrow because today is not fresh. What they're saying is not tomorrow. What they're saying is fresh. Now, fresh is available tomorrow, so be it. Fresh is available 5 kilometers away, so be it. Fresh is available 20% premium, so be it. Those are the choices people are making. But when fresh is available now at market price, why would anyone make any trade off? So I think that is very clear in everyone's mind. The question is, can companies change? Can the elephant dance? I think that will define the category probably. Your thoughts?
I totally agree that the competition doesn't come much from companies that are sorted already, right? It would rather come from companies that are struggling to find PMF, or maybe have been sort of building for a different use case which has changed now. So earlier it was social commerce. We didn't find much PMF maybe in India, but quick commerce has sort of spoken even louder, right? So I totally believe that the competition would come from those sort of companies, right? And so as you said, so this is a pure play, sort of all about the execution, right? Whoever does the best execution would win, right? Even for grocery, also, even for
Yeah,
fruits and vegetables, for both the, because these are very hard categories to solve, right? So uh, it would be the execution that would play the part, and yeah, there can be some differences of timing, maybe, right? So you're right. So we also believe that vertical marketplace would shift towards this model, sort of like building a vertical marketplace for quick commerce faster than the quick commerce guys would change their supply chains
got it.
to curate it for fruits and vegetables.
Got it. No, there is a the way I would want to think about it is, see, this is not a winner takes all market. It's a very hyper local market. Even in quick commerce, what we are seeing is Blinkit is very strong in Gurgaon. Maybe Instamart is much stronger in Bangalore.
Right.
Maybe Zepto is stronger in Mumbai. I don't know that. We've seen Zomato stronger in North and Swiggy stronger in South. This is like for a decade, these companies have been fighting these wars. And still, we see that consumer preference and, service levels and brand presence, all those things matter, right? If it's a big enough market, then probably execution is not like I can execute equally well across the board. It has to be in each hyperlocal, each market, each dark store, each, obviously, processes and product and, capital, all those things can help, brand can help, but still you have to win it at a store by store level. And in a big market, in offline we have seen, huge companies coming out of it, and they have very little market share, so to say. The organization itself is very small. E-commerce is a much smaller part of that, and, quick commerce is another smaller part of that, and overall they add up to modern trade. All the chains and, e-commerce and quick commerce, they add up to the total commerce, organized commerce, and then there is unorganized, which is still bigger. So I think, probably another thing I feel, which is, which you have been pointing to, that you are trying to replicate the offline behavior, which means the product is designed differently, the sourcing is designed differently, and that product doesn't change. Like when I was at Jabong, there was Fab Furnish, which was doing only furniture, and at Jabong we were doing fashion, beauty, bunch of other things, and also furniture. Now, small things. That furniture typically is shot as landscape, and fashion is typically shot as a, portrait kind of a photo. That itself created dissonance. How do we address this complexity? uh, and you may not get the best answer there. So I think by going and putting out those things like, we'll click photographs, we'll put the timer there that shot 2 hours ago, 1 hour ago, uh, and do, I mean, the more you go deeper into this, probably, which you can, as you keep, you'll keep seeing, you will find answers in this category which may not be true for other categories. So I think horizontal to vertical answer is a lot easier, and I think those are the bigger competitions. uh, Vertical, nobody has really conquered the market, nobody has the capital to kind of run amok. uh, there, it will be case by case, who executes how and all. So I think the bigger risk is coming from horizontal e-commerce and horizontal quick commerce players, where I think vertical gives you some kind of a safe place to go deep. Uh, but I would not bet against vertical folks who realize that everything is fine, but they are losing market share to quick, and they will add that muscle. Uh, so, but then they are not that scary animals. Uh, these horizontal ones are monsters. They have to be fought differently. They cannot be fought on capital. They cannot be fought on execution. You have to probably fight them on category nuances, which is probably the fourth thing. Like I was before meeting you, I thought there were three dimensions to this. There is price, there is delivery time or TAT, and there is quality or freshness. I think what I learned was this whole offline behavior, replicating that, which I felt is like probably an overkill. But the more I kind of understand this, the more I feel that probably that is where your differentiation lies. And people will have to give up those things. And it's much harder for horizontal folks to build these kind of workflows. But who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was actually coming to that. The It's not a winner take all market, especially in the beginning, right? Or maybe customers actually need two marketplaces at least, right? So for cabs, I have Ola and Uber, so I'll usually have both in my uh, mobile phone, right? For e-commerce, I would have Flipkart, Amazon, right? I would have preferences for certain categories for one, certain categories for other, right? Maybe uh, as and as you said, so the differentiation would then come up later on. Those differentiation would be maybe on the category side, maybe on the geographic side, right? So those are the differentiation that people usually build later on, right? When you are sort of fighting the other large players, right? But you're right. So uh, fighting the horizontals is actually more scary, right? Even for us. So that is the realization from day one, right? But we are more convinced that they want sort of revamp everything in a shorter period of time, right?
Fair
So,
enough.
and even in the longer run, we would have higher chance of winning because of the category nuances. This was the reason, pure reason, right from the beginning, for us to be very convinced about this was because this category actually has a lot of nuances, and building it within a horizontal marketplace. is actually very challenging. Right?
Got it. Changing track, how do you acquire your users? And is that how you'll acquire them at scale, or how will you scale? Is there something initially you're doing which are things that don't scale, and then you'll move to a different model? But some thoughts on GTM.
So far, we have tried very fewer channels, right? Of course, we have excluded online because it's a sort of micro market kind of play, right? Because it's a hyper local play. We have just one dark store which is covering a radius of 1 and 1.5 kilometers, right? So it's a micro market. So online would not have that much
Makes
GTM,
sense.
right? So we are focusing largely on the offline part. And even the offline, we have tried a few channels only so far. And what has worked best, we just continued with that, right? Because customer acquisition scaling up was not the objective, right? So far, the objective was to sort of like validate our hypothesis, right? Can we actually build a differentiated supply chain which can provide better quality products to the customers, right? And we have been hearing a lot of good things so far, not just from a couple of customers, but we have been speaking to a lot of customers, and this has been across the user base that the sort of statements like, your products are much better than other quick commerce platforms. So sort of like, and that is affecting the retention cohorts also, right? So we have much better retention cohorts so far, even when compared to the vertical marketplaces. Uh, so we have not tried much of the, as I said, the acquisition channels, right? So far, what has worked good for us has been sort of pamphlet distribution of the societies, right? And we have been able to acquire enough number of customers to scale it up so far, right? But going forward, what I think this has been a sort of like a more or less, especially in the shorter run, this has been a solved problem, right? I built something similar in OTP also. Uh, so going hyper local offline so that you can touch every household is something that has been solved so far, already solved, right? So this is what we are going to do. Uh, Trying multiple sort of channels to reach to every household in every society, right? Uh, is ha- is something that has been solved. Trying the society events, right, door-to-door marketing, be it silent or maybe talking to the customer, right? And other channels like lift branding or even penetrating the WhatsApp groups and all. So there are multiple sort of touch points that you can use to reach to the customers offline, right? So this is what we would do at the same time. So one sort of nuance, especially for this category, is let's say if I sort of start buying from maybe a grocery player, right? So for me, it would largely be the pricing or maybe the speed, right? That will differentiate. But if I see that behavior in my initial couple of orders, I'll continue. Right? But for grocery, for fruits and vegetables, this takes longer to build the trust for the customer to actually stick to the platform, right? So we'll have to incentivize the customers to test our platform, our products for a slightly longer number of orders, right? And communicate it better to the customers. Uh, how differentiated our model is, especially the buying experience that is there currently in the app. You see there, right? So far, this has been one of the challenges so far, actually, to communicate that proposition to the customers. A lot of customers are able to sort of understand from the interface itself that these are the pieces that we are actually seeing, and we would receive the same pieces that we're ordering, right? But for a lot of other customers, because people have been using such platforms since a long time now, we have sort of like built-in behavior that the images that we see there are just the representation images, right? Even if there are smaller blocks that are available below a full screen image or a larger screen image, full width image, those are the SKUs. This is generally what we perceive, right? On
Yeah.
Blinkit, you see there are multiple SKUs. 1 kilo hai, आधा kilo hai, 500 gram. Those different. So this is a communication that, but I think over time this will become better, right? Once we have more channels to communicate to the customers, especially the online as well as print, for example, right? So once we have those channels also available for us with a wider coverage, once we have that, right? So I think this will become better. Even on the product side also, there are still a lot of changes that we have in plan so far that we will do so that to make it more easier for customers to understand.
This reminds me of real estate, where we have been so used to being sold an artistic version of the image, that
Mm.
sometimes when you have a ready to move property, they say actual image, try
Yeah,
to show actual people. So
correct.
maybe you have to just you know do that a little bit more conspicuously, then people will get it.
For a customer, so I think there are three things buying while buying fruits and vegetables online that matter is speed, quality, and price. If they get all three, or maybe let's say two, within one app, rather than changing multiple apps, right? For one, so where I'm getting fastest product with freshest quality, I would always prefer that as compared to if I'm getting either the fresh products or the speed, right? So this is where I think a clear differentiation would be. Right? So the customer would prefer an app where, a platform where uh, as many number of uh, their needs are being solved within one place.
So minimize the trade-offs. Customer would not make trade-offs. If we can get
Right,
everything, why not everything, right? They will not
right,
say no to everything. They will say today they are broken across channels because there are trade-offs involved.
right.
And even the same user is buying from different channels means that they're not fully served, fully solved. The problem is not solved.